Welcome to Grow For It. It's a podcast for small business owners, managers, and professionals. The goal is to give me a chance to work with the space between your ears, on your mindset, to help you focus on the things that really matter to your success. I want to enable you to concentrate on pursuing your vision, setting meaningful goals, and engaging in the day-to-day activities that will have the biggest impact. Thanks for joining me. Well, friends, welcome back. Today, I thought we'd kick off the year with a new approach, and along that theme, I've got two guests actually today in the podcast studio with me. I've got Rita Ernst, who's an industrial psychologist and business coach, and I think her approach to looking at businesses and working with clients is kind of interesting and unique, and it may be something that you can take advantage of as we get into the new year here. I've also got Coral Abood. Coral is a photographer, but she's also a brand and image consultant. And one of the things that tends to happen toward the beginning of the year is people kind of take a new, fresh look at all of their digital properties out there and how they're positioning their brand in the marketplace. And she has a very unique, interesting approach to how she actually interacts with her clients. So in having met these guys before, I thought, you know what, let's get on the podcast and let's just kind of introduce both of you, obviously, to the audience, but let's tell them about your business and kind of talk through some of the interesting challenges going into 2021 from 2020, which was obviously its own bag of tricks and fun adventures. So with that, hey, Rita, why don't you tell us a little bit about your business?
Well, thanks for having us, Jim. We're really
Absolutely.
excited to join you today. As you said, I am unique as a business coach in that my background is industrial and organizational psychology, and that's been my entire profession. So a lot of people come into coaching after spending time in strategy or accounting or all kinds of different things and do that certification. But my headset and my approach is a lot different because this has been my entire career. And I really like serving small businesses that are in that, less than $10 million range, that are also at that interesting point of growth where they've passed through the startup. They are flying with brilliant colors, really on a fantastic run, but they've hit that uh-oh moment where now they've built something they don't know how to run anymore, and it's running them instead. And so because of my background, I can help them really build out their leadership team and structure for their organization, roles and responsibilities and processes and culture and all of those things that make an organization work.
That's fantastic. And that's the kind of approach that people need to start thinking about, because I think a lot's changed in how you're approaching the market. And I love the fact that it's gotten big enough that now it's running them. And I think a lot of solopreneurs, small business owners kind of found yourselves in that area very frequently. We don't know kind of what to do at that point. So I really want to unpack that with you. Hey, Coral, tell us a little bit about your business.
Yes. Well, first of all, thanks for having me
Absolutely.
here today. So as you mentioned earlier, I am a photographer. I've been running my business for almost 12 years. And I started out in the portrait industry, but very quickly grew into the corporate industry. And that's where I spend the bulk of my time. And that's really what I'm here to talk to you all about today, too, is with your businesses. When I'm working with a business, oftentimes they'll come to me because they're looking for custom imaging for their website or for their social media. And there's really two questions that I always start out by asking them is, hey, what sets you apart? What is making you unique in your industry against your competitors? And the second question is, who is your target audience? And I think those two questions in and of themselves really sum up what sets me apart from other corporate photographers is the level of intention that I'm bringing into the images that I'm going to provide for your company. Your target audience very much matters in how we style your photos. Everything that we're going to do as far as your digital marketing goes, we've got to know who you are, tell your story, and to specifically your audience. So there's quite a bit of intention I bring to that.
When we first met, that was one of the things that really kind of opened my eyes to that whole, wow, this is visual storytelling. Because I've been on a lot of sites where offices where we're doing website photography for the day. So the guy or the lady comes in and, okay, let's do a desk shot over here. Let's have a group talking in the conference room with not really a lot of thought as to the overall. Mm-hmm. And I think this will work. But your approach is unique. And again, I really want to unpack that as we go.
Thank you.
Rita, let me transition back to you. And you brought up an interesting thing when you were saying that, these are ongoing businesses, not necessarily startups. These are people who have kind of been in the game for a while now. And suddenly scale comes into play and the complexities are much different. At startup, you're just trying to prove the concept and get it going. Now it's going, but there's a lot of other pressures coming from different directions. Let's talk about that and how you actually help in that area.
Well, it's true that as humans, we can put on a tremendous burst of energy and attention, but we cannot sustain that for a long period of time. So I remember going to boot camp years ago, and the guy would say, 40 more seconds. You can do anything for 40 more seconds. And you're in your head, you're going, yeah, I can do this for 40 more seconds. But when you're a business owner and you've put everything into growing this business to become what you want it to become, and all of a sudden it's there, what it took to get it to that point and what you can sustain going forward are not the same things. And that's where people begin to hit the wall. And depending on the size that you've grown to, it's not only you as the business owner, it could be the people that work for you. And you could be driving them absolutely crazy. And all of a sudden you're going to start getting negative reviews on Glassdoor and places. It can become something that was so beautiful can start to get marred so quickly. And that's really what tends to set business owners on their heels and has them ready to work with somebody like me to get their business back on track.
Kind of right size. And I think for a lot of people, they've got a really good, strong skill set and they've got a passion for a certain service or product or something, and they're really good in that area. But now they're forced, especially in a small business, because you wear so many different hats, to get into different areas where really maybe you're not as developed or advanced in those capabilities and competencies. And so that overall lack of infrastructure, I think in the pre-planning, we talked a little bit about that. Also that lack of delegation, that never happens, does it?
No. I just had a business owner say to me yesterday, I don't know, because I'm a control freak. I don't know if I could outsource that. And a lot of business owners, big and small things, struggle with that. But there's two things that happens. There is, as you said, that there's that your natural gift and your passion and how you really drive value in your business. Then there's all these other things that you never knew that now you have to pay attention to. And it's like drinking from a fire hose. I got to do something with marketing or sales or taxes or human resources or whatever it is. And some of those things people gladly give away to others. And some of those things, it's scary to give it away. And so I talk a lot about building confidence in your decision making. And I think that's an important role that a coach plays, is being that sounding board with somebody to help them really think through why they're making a decision, the implications, the alternatives that they've discarded, so that when they decide to outsource, they're doing that confidently. They know why they've gotten to that decision, and they're more likely to stand behind that decision.
They've actually put some thought into it. It's not reflexive because I don't have a lot of time to consider it. It may be a major decision, and maybe you don't fully have a grasp of everything in there, but you got to get it done. So you want to check the box. I love checking box. I'm a list maker. I love kind of getting through the list as much as I can, but you've got to delegate time, especially when other people within the organization rely on that. And I think at one point you had mentioned that, sometimes you can be the biggest bottleneck because every decision has to go through you. And if you're not a delegator,
Yes.
that could be poison.
Yes, it is poison. It is poison for you. It's poison for the people around you. But it's very true. Most of us build our businesses so that we are at the center of everything. And that's because we started out doing everything until we grew a little bit and brought on other resources or other employees to help us. And, that issue of time, it is the biggest complexity, because you are running so hard to keep up with what you've built that the ability to make time to work on moving your business forward and building out that infrastructure to allow it to happen is the biggest struggle most leaders have. So when they come to the decision to hire a business coach or to bring me in to work with them, the number one benefit they immediately get is now they are spending time on building their business instead of running their business. And they see the impact of that instantaneously.
And that's the hardest thing for people to step away. And this was your phrase early on, was working on the business instead of in the business. And I've used that in previous podcasts and in previous articles. It's one of the biggest challenges for people because we're so inundated with everything on the plate, right? And all the way down to planning. And you've seen this, Coral, as well.
Isn't she fantastic? This is why pretty much everyone I work with, I'm like, do you have a coach? Do you need a coach? Let me introduce you to Rita.
and that's kind of interesting because you guys do have a business relationship in that you guys often tag along together on different projects, and there's some synergies there. And we're going to unpack that in just a minute. I know you had mentioned that you kind of define success for your business, Rita, and for yourself as success. The client success is really my reward. What does that mean? I mean, that looks good on a business card, but describe that, explain that.
work and the outcomes are not mine. I get hugely invested in my clients, and they become like my family, and I feel like I'm a part of their business. But the truth is, I cannot do it for them. I can't want it for them more than they want it. So whatever results are created, they created those results. I was a catalyst. I was a sounding board. I was a support system, but they own those. Those are not my victories. I get to share the field. It's sort of like I passed the ball, they made the layup.
Right.
There's some teamwork there, but the victory is theirs. But that doesn't make me appreciate it any less or celebrate it any less.
Right. And again, ultimately, they've got to make the decisions and take action, but you tend to give them that clarity. You help define that clarity for them based on what they've said, hey, I'm struggling here, or maybe I don't really know what the issue is. But with your psychology background, you can kind of come in and see it from a different perspective. And I think having that extra pair of eyes on any business challenge is so valuable. I've always talked about having a team of advisors that you can really go into and say, look, I got to put this out on the table. I need to be safe in doing that. But at the same time, I need your advice, right?
When it's your own stuff, you are too close to it. It can be very hard to have perspective. And I think the other thing that is really important and valuable about a coach is you are forced to speak out loud. And in our brains, there is something different that happens when we are using our voice and we are speaking than what happens when we are just quietly thinking to ourselves. And it's a magical something that happens. Somebody said at one time, oh my gosh, if I say it out loud, then I have to own it and do something about it.
Strange how that is.
There's truth in that.
Yeah. What you gave us an example at one point during the planning for this episode about actually an attorney who needed help with some HR and some hiring. You want to kind of explain that to the audience and let us kind of know that's another area that you kind of had the capability of coming in. When I ran operations, I hated the HR side of it because everybody was a great candidate. I loved them all. They were great, It didn't mean I made a great hiring decision for my needs. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I did spend a fair amount of my career in human resources. Haven't chosen to go back to that, but I know that practice well. And this particular attorney was in a networking group with me, and she needed to hire somebody, and she had struggled to find the right person. And what I helped her do was really document what the tasks were. You think that seems so simple, but it's not. And if these are the tasks are insufficient because it's the person who shows up. It's how they show up to do the tasks that really matters because that enables the relationship and the trust. And so we had to uncover what was important to her about this person and how to write that into qualifications and qualities that you could select for, and then how to design interview questions that you could use. And we actually did all of in her process, because it was just her trying to run her practice, already down staff. We implemented a pre-screening questionnaire written because one of the important skills was writing skills. So if they couldn't respond with good writing skills to that, they were removed, right?
That's
so
brilliant.
Yeah.
so
Kinda brilliant.
we had over 80 applicants because it was a really well-written job description.
Right.
In a matter of weeks, we had the job filled in less than 6 weeks because we were able to screen through, and then we narrowed it down to the top 7 candidates, and she personally interviewed them all in one day so that we could compare real time, at the end of the day, where do these rank? Why do they rank this way? What, who would you exclude and why? And so by compressing the timeline like that, she actually got to a better decision because it wasn't, I interviewed that person weeks ago and I can't remember anymore.
Right. And it's not only unfair to the hiring manager, it's unfair to the candidate.
And it's hard to sometimes force a day to make those things happen. But there's tremendous value in process and sometimes in tightening the timeline around process. And those are just little tips and tricks that I know and have experienced and are part, again, of that background that I have in organizational psychology.
Well, the interesting side of this is, again, that HR capability or that knowledge of the things I need to look for, how to really develop those questions effectively, may not be in my wheelhouse. I'm really good, again, over here. What I like about your approach is you really do an excellent job of optimizing that passion that the owner already brings to the job, to the role, to the organization, and the value that they add when they may not be adding that much value in this side of it. And you're able to kind of clarify that, bring in a resource or become that resource for a while to help them get over that challenge. I mean, that's gold.
Well, thank you. I mean, there's nothing worse to me than seeing somebody standing at the side of the room, banging their forehead against the wall over and over and over again. And those are the people that as soon as I see them, I'm like, I know I can help you.
No, it happens. You know, that's the funny thing. The big difference between being part of a corporation with layers of support, departments for this and managers for that and directors over this area, to being a solopreneur or a small business entrepreneur is that you really don't have that. So you've got to get really good, but you've got to know when to raise your hand and to reach out to someone like you to say, hey, look, this is critical. This may be mission critical, and I'm not ready for this. I need help. And in trying to come to that level of understanding, that self-awareness, I would think for a lot of people is, you know, because it gets an ego a little bit. I've got to admit that I'm not really great in this area. I'm often told that, but I don't want to admit it, right? And I can see how that can be a bit of a stumbling block for a lot of people.
I think it's a huge struggle for most small business owners and
I would think so.
solopreneurs. They have no idea. Your next blog, Rita, should be just a list of adjectives. Do you feel any of these things? We need to self-test ourselves. We have no idea when we need a coach and when we don't.
I actually have a free coaching assessment that gets to a lot of those
There you
things
go.
on my website. Yeah,
Okay.
that helps people. But what I would add to this conversation is that a lot of my clients compare working with me to therapy. And I think the reason that they do that is threefold. One, the presence that I have, the intensity and intentionality of just being present for them. Two is the listening without judgment. And that's tremendous because talking about solopreneurs and entrepreneurs in business, we spend a lot of time now these days looking around us, comparing ourselves to other people. Mm-hmm. And we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to be experts at a lot of things that it's not reasonable for us to have expertise in. And to sit across and talk about that and have me say, it's okay. How can you let that go? Why do you think that's important? It really helped them get past their own negative talk. Yep. It is huge. So it's the presence, it's the listening, and then it's the questions. You know, the ability to, again, to your point, to stand outside of their pain or their moment of experience with a fresh set of eyes so that I can really help them see that in a different light.
Well, and on the other side of that coin is that a lot of time the rules of success, the rules of how, which is really the reason why we're sitting down today, is new year, new approach. Everything we've done in our businesses the last decade or so, just throw it out, right? So, but as small business owners, the rules of success, the rules of marketing, which app should you be on, what social, everything is changing all the time. But one thing Rita's not sharing about herself, that's actually where she does spend a lot of her energy, is that she stays absolutely in the know. She knows all these hip words and phrases and things well before I do. So she's actually not just sitting with and being present with the business owner and understanding their situation, where they want to grow, but also she's understanding the industry. So she's keeping up. And that's one of the things that I certainly haven't met any other coaches that invest that much time in being able to keep up with what's happening.
Well, and Rita, part of that, we've talked about the activated solopreneur or small business owner who knows I've got a blind spot. But I would think there's also value in saying, you know what, maybe I need to sit down, go through an assessment or go through some, because I may not know what I need, at this particular moment, and I want to thrive, but you can kind of be, again, that catalyst, to use your word, to really help them get there and to be able to show them a little bit of the real world. This is how it should happen, but on the factory floor, this is what's really going on, or in the office, this is what really gets done. I know you think it's this way, but often there's a disparity between the theory and the implementation.
Yes. I mean, especially in the new generation. I'm a Gen Xer, and we're the DIY generation. And that can sometimes make it hard because, our generation, they don't necessarily want to buy our services. They want to read the book and figure it out themselves.
Watch the video.
Watch the video, have the workshop, whatever. But the millennial generation, and they are now the stronghold in business, they're very different than us. And they they're looking for the quick, the expedient route. And so they are more interested in connecting with people who can help them get there faster.
So it's a little different approach than, again, Gen Xer, right? And how I might approach it and think, okay, I'm going to grind through this. I'm going to figure it out eventually. But these guys are into rapid speed. And
Yes.
And
they're into rapid speed in terms of their career, which means they didn't do the work you and I did to get grounded into those processes and norms
that never
and
causes
basics
problems.
of
That never
business.
causes problems.
So, I'm like Moses with the 10 Commandments sometimes, because I have this knowledge that that they will never have, because they would never be willing to sacrifice their time to what I did. And there's no negative judgment about that. I say God bless them, because I'm not sure all of the benefit of what I went through early in my career. But
I'm with you.
But I am strong and capable business coach doing what I love today, so it can't be all bad.
Well, and that bleeds through in your interactions with the client. You told me another story about there was a company over in Southern Indiana. There was a CEO needed some help. You want to unpack that for us a little bit?
Oh, sure. It's one of my. If you check out my social media at Ignite Extraordinary, I tell all kinds of stories about this client that I've been working with. I met them in what we determined was flood stage. They were an essential business. And they do glass installation, commercial glass installation. So when the pandemic hit, they quickly scrambled to secure as many contracts as they could, so they could keep their employees working and keep them on the payroll and keep things moving along. And then all of a sudden, the social justice movement began. And there was all of this destruction in Indianapolis and Louisville, and they were getting calls like crazy. Come board up windows, come fix and repair windows, things like that. And they had a couple of major contracts that were already on the books that they had, but they all of a sudden they just had all of this business coming down upon them. They're traveling all over Eastern United States during COVID, which means sometimes they can't find a bathroom, sometimes they can't find food. It was a lot. And when the business owner contacted me, I was guesting on Ask the Experts, which is a local radio show that I guest on frequently. And he was just like, my troops are tired. I need to pull them together. I'm exhausted. I can't think straight. I just don't know how much longer we can go like this. And so what we ended up doing was, we had his meeting that he wanted to have with his team, and we went all the way back to his origin story. He's owned this company for 8 years, and he started with a truck and his skill set and a few tools, and just scraped and lived out of his truck on jobs trying to pull it together. We revisited his origin story and really talked about the founding values of the company, and as well as the values that were currently in play. And really spent time collectively identifying which ones were most important going forward and what that would look like. And the beauty of this story is, I just love this group, because this is what the best part about working in small companies. They just started doing it. They didn't have to wait for permission. They didn't have to convene a group. They didn't have to have a 10-step action plan. The next Monday, they came into the shop and they said, we need to be more planful. What can we do? And they started doing it.
They had that buy-in. They saw the vision, and they had a role in it.
And all of a sudden, now they've gone from this vicious cycle that's pulling down energy, to building their own virtuous cycle, where it's like, wow, that went so much better. What can we do to make it better tomorrow? And they're just riding that updraft.
Completely actively engaged, which is what every leader wants, is a team that's just actively engaged in the process. That's how it's. Hey, let's transition just a little bit here. Obviously 2020 was a brutal year for a lot of people. A lot of changes, a lot of things that were out of our control, a lot of different drivers of those feelings and emotions. But as we move forward into 2021, and as we look at, okay, this year is going to be different for a lot of reasons, and maybe we need to approach it differently based on what we've just come through. You've got a series of a few tips in there that I'd like to talk with you about. And one of them is leaving 2020 in the rearview mirror.
Yeah, I have been on message about this. I blog regularly, and I speak at groups. And do not, I implore you, do not carry the energy of 2020 forward with you. It is time to make a break. And you can do that and feel good about it for these two basic reasons. One is that, as Coral was saying earlier, Coral and I, we're in a partnership together, and we firmly believe that everything that you used to plan your business in the past, every assumption you thought was true about who your market was and what you were doing and what was going to sell your business, it's irrelevant after this pandemic.
It hurts, but it's true.
Yeah.
We've had to create all new ways of coming together, operating our businesses. Everything is different. We do not know what the consumer marketplace looks like. We don't know how quickly or how much of it will return to brick and mortar, for example, how long that will take. I mean, you can't look at, okay, last year or the year before that, before COVID, I was doing this amount in sales and making this kind of margin, and I had this many customers. And so based on those numbers, the pandemic will be back in operation, maybe I'll say by July 1st. And so starting July 1st forward, I'm going to have this market. No,
Right.
that is not true. You can't make any of those. So you got to let go of all of those assumptions and beliefs that you hold, and you've got to start doing new data capture about where the market is. And I say, if last year was the year of pivot, this year is the year of flex.
That's a great way of thinking about it.
You've got to realize that you've built some new business processes, you have some new operating models. You've got to decide how you're going to flex. How many of those carry forward, and in what ways do they carry forward? And which of those are you abandoning or leaving behind? And which of your old processes can you plug back in? Or do you have to alter those in some way? You just really have to. We started a project together called the Pivot Project at the beginning of COVID, featuring businesses in Louisville, trying to tell positive stories, to give hope to other business owners. And W. Cousins was one of the first stories. A lot of people were telling their story. But, their little makeshift drive-through that they did business out of, they turned that into part of their business model. They now have built out an official drive-through, and they will continue on their business with that drive-through as a regular part of their service. That's what I'm talking about. You got to decide what you keep, what you give up, what's going to be different. And as I alluded to earlier, the boomers post this pandemic, they're exiting the market, the business world. You're just not going to see them working in any numbers of any matter anymore, except, maybe at the very top of the organization. Us Gen Xers, we're this little tiny crew. A lot of us are getting to the place where we're thinking about retirement anyway. So this means that business is being run by millennials and the Zoomers that are coming up, Gen Z that's coming up. They're taking over, and they are different. They have different expectations, different needs, different connection to technology and the way in which they expect things to be delivered to them. So it is time. It is time to set aside everything you think you know and cast a new vision for your business.
Well, the great thing about that, while change can be often disruptive, and it forces a lot of emotion, and it forces a lot of, geez, I don't know, let's give it a try. Let's put the effort into it. When any change occurs, opportunities are the ripple effect, and we just don't know. I mean, look what's happened in telehealth. Where, how many people are getting better service, improved service now because they're able to do it on a smartphone or on their PC versus actually traveling sometimes from out of the county into a different location just to sit in a waiting room with other patients and then try to get, treated and then drive all the way home. All of these things open up new opportunities and new possibilities. So while it may seem a little daunting now, be optimistic. We just don't know. We just really don't know what's coming, and that's exciting. If you have the right mindset, and hey, pat yourself on the back. You survived 2020.
It's true. We have survived 100% of our worst days so far.
Yeah, I'm serious. The locusts didn't show up. Maybe they'll show up in February. I don't know.
Jim.
But seriously, realistic. So many opportunities are going to come with this because once these changes are really part of how we do it, other people are going to look for innovation. Other people are going to look for, well, here's an ancillary service. Hey, I think I could do that faster. I think I could deliver that better, more cost effectively. And that changes everything.
Well, I love what you said about change. I just want to jump in and add to that we used to talk about, you probably heard this phrase back in your corporate days too, the burning platform. Do you remember the burning platform? The pandemic was the burning platform. So if you're a nonprofit or a large company that's still being run by older generations, this was a gift. This was a godsend, because you've short-circuited years and years of discussion and debate about holding on to old models of being. The platform just ignited underneath your feet. There's no choice, right?
I have a friend of mine who said, remember, Cortez burned the boats. You know, we're all into this. I mean, we are committed. We're moving forward. There is no going back. And I think that's what a lot of us are going to need to come to terms with going into 2020. Rita, thank you. I really appreciate that. Coral, you know, you play an integral role, or you've got the capability to play an integral role in this, because as we back up and say, okay, we may have a different target audience now. We may have a different go-to-market strategy. All of that really comes down to how do we portray ourselves, and how do we push into that new frontier, and what are we using in terms of our branding elements? Let's talk about your business, Willow Tree.
Absolutely. These are great questions that you're asking. Audiences are changing, but more importantly, the behaviors of the audience are changing. We don't just see a change in sales and the way that people are spending their money. We see a difference in the way that they are using the internet, the way that they are using social media, the way they are experiencing digital marketing. That is really where my niche lies when I'm working with a business on their imaging or their brand. It's really looking at that customer experience. Everything that we put out on social media, if you've got a website, if you've got a Facebook page, everything that you put out online is either going to draw in your audience or it's going to push them away. So we're talking about aesthetics, we're talking about experience, and that is really where your brand, kind of that intuition behind the image that you're putting out, that what's really speaking to the audience. Are we speaking to the audience you have that you kind of maybe don't want to have anymore, or are we learning the audience that you want to have and being able to reach out and speak directly to them? Pretty much every project that I work on with a client, I come equipped with my researcher. He's in my back pocket all the time.
That's such a unique approach.
And
this
is like Rita was talking about. This is the power of delegation. I don't need to be the expert on every single audience, or really even be a master of the internet. I have someone else who does that for me. And the audience research that he brings for me is absolutely phenomenal. And it is changing quite rapidly. It has been changing the last few years, but especially since the pandemic, people's behaviors and how they're using the internet is changing. And that is your number one way to reach them right now, is through digital marketing.
Well, and that's interesting, because that kind of dovetails, talking about the audience, dovetails on what Rita was saying about the millennials. They're not really word-oriented as much. I mean, they don't want to sit down and read an article or read a long newsletter or read a blog post by you. They want to look at pictures and derive something from that picture, whether that's an emotion, whether that's a brand positioning, whether that's an experience. That UX, that user experience, is so critical.
It really
and that's
is
where
all
you
about.
get a big part of that.
It really is all about the emotions. We are, and you hear other people say this all the time, we are the most connected we've ever been as a society, but yet we are so isolated. And we get online and you're scrolling. I mean, you even see it in the commercials. People are scrolling faster than they could possibly read anything. But what they are looking for is, in a fraction of an instant, does that picture give me the feels? Does this post give me the feels? Where am I at? If it doesn't grab me within 2 seconds, I'm going to keep scrolling.
Exactly, because I'm not the only game in town. There are plenty of other competitors out there vying for that peace of mind, that attention point. And it's difficult. Now, one of the ways that you approach any of your engagements with a client is that you're actually a storyteller. Let's talk about that.
I love telling stories. Much like Rita, I become very invested in my client, in their business. I want to tell their story. If you look at this from just an imaging perspective, my number one competitor is going to be stock photography. There's plenty of websites out there covered with stock photography, but you're telling someone else's story. You're not telling your own story. You're not saying what sets you apart from your competitors. You're not, again, pointing out the audience that you want and inviting them in, right? So storytelling is really sort of where I find my niche with the imaging. And that's where I kind of branch from just doing the corporate photography to really doing the branding work, because I find, as long as I've been doing this, I have found that their story goes beyond just their pictures. It goes into their font, their color choice, their as I have been working in this realm for a while. I mean, it's brand voice, it's everything.
Hey, what's wrong with New Times Roman, right?
Right. Yeah, it just depends on your audience. Okay. But consistency across all of these platforms, I mean, consistency builds consumer trust. So again, if we want to retain the customers that we have, or we want to reach out to new ones, a lot of businesses might go, well, I have a solid brand, everything is successful, why do I need to revamp? Well, again, audiences are changing. The economy and the way that we're using the internet is absolutely changing. But I just lost my train of thought.
But as all of that does, you're not expected as a photographer to understand all that. Yes, you have a market researcher who helps you with some very valuable insights as you approach. But at the same time, you sit down and spend an extraordinary amount of time interviewing the client about their business, about their company.
Absolutely. A lot of customers will come to me and say, "Hey, I've got a web designer. I need some pictures. Will you take my pictures for me?" And I start asking them questions about their concept and about their audience and their brand voice, and they go, "I don't know. I don't really know any of these things." And I say, "Well, let's talk about them. I need to know these in order to." I mean, anyone can give you beautiful pictures, okay? There's lots of other corporate photographers out there, but are these pictures going to work for you? Are these images going to actually be marketing on your behalf? Are they going to, I mean, this is an investment that you're making. Are they really going to speak to the audience that you want them to speak to? And here's what I was going to say earlier. So working smarter, not harder, has sort of been my mantra for the last couple of years. And that's where it is so important, as we've been talking about changing our approach, is going, okay, here's what has worked for me in my business. Here's my audience that has been paying the bills and been consistent referrers over the years. But again, audiences are changing. Who is my work smarter, not harder audience? Where do I want to be bringing in new clients where maybe they're paying more and I'm putting in less time? So we're talking about not just maintaining our existing audience, but growing in the direction that is going to overall help you hit your financial goals. That's the point of marketing, is to grow the business.
And I thought you were just a photographer, right?
That's what everyone says, Jeff. They say, "Oh, you're so much more than a photographer."
Well, if I can just jump in and give a quick testimonial. 2 years ago, I think it was in the fall, I did a trade show booth, and Coral joined me for the final evening to take pictures for me. And this is one of those services that she has that I never would have thought of, but it makes total sense, where she'll follow you around for a day, a week, whatever, and snap pictures of you in your element doing your thing.
Personal paparazzi.
And yeah, I mean, it's fantastic. And so we just happened to be playing a game, and we hadn't had a grand prize winner yet. And while she was standing there just taking pictures in my booth or whatever, this woman who played all 4 days stopped to play one final time, won the grand prize. We have this big victory celebration. My hands are up in the air. We all have these huge smiles on our faces. We're hugging one another. And she got every picture. When I use those pictures on my LinkedIn account,
right,
or my Facebook account or my Instagram account, I get more views, more likes, and more followers than anything else.
She's beautiful. She's enthusiastic. It was my pleasure. But the testimony, right, is that the picture works, right?
So that's different from the boss's kid walking around with the iPhone and a couple filters, right? But you go into it with a defined, these are the objectives for this event or for this interaction. This is what I really want to pull out, because you've spent that time up front researching and interviewing the client as far as, okay, what would make this successful? And then you bring it in. It's not just about clicking the Nikon. It's about, hey, look, let's plan this out, because, again, this imagery is your brand. This imagery is you and your company and your position.
And the authenticity. I mean, I think especially millennials and Zoomers, they have a pretty good BS filter. And so
my kids tell me so.
So they're looking for some authenticity, and when you stage it, it's different.
Yeah.
Than when you capture a true moment.
Right, when that's real. People can feel it. It gives you the feels. I think that's the
That's
the
right.
term.
That is the point.
There you go. Well, you had a story as we were planning this episode about a photographer. I guess you were engaging with a doctor's office to do some work for him.
Yes. Unfortunately, I hear these stories a lot. Most of the companies that come to me already have websites, and so they're just needing to get updated photos. And I hear the same story over and over. But this particular client that called me in was a physician's office, and And I started working with them and asking them just a couple of questions. I didn't want to overwhelm them. I've been doing this a long time. I know what I need to do, but I wanted to ask them again a little bit about themselves and understand who their audience is so that I could really make the pictures effective. And she said, well, I don't know. Usually the other photographers just come in and ask us for a shot list, and we have to come up with a shot list. And I nearly choked.
How
and I
are they
thought,
qualified
hold
to do
on,
that?
you're the manager of the nurses. Why would you need to be providing a photographer the shot list? What? So, but it's unfortunate, but those are the shoes that I follow quite a lot. But that is part of what I feel like, for me, really gives me so much joy, is to be able. I don't mind coming into some of these disaster stories, because the joy for me is that when we're finished, we've had our planning session, we've done the photos, they haven't even seen the pictures yet, right? It's still picture day, and they're all just, their shoulders are relaxed, and they're like, this was so much better than I thought it was going to be. And
makes for a better
this is 8 surgeons in their white coats, and they were all super nervous and stiff at the beginning of the photo shoot, and
You're
they're
so
like,
intimidating.
I know, and I guess, right? Well, no, I mean, a lot of people have negative experiences with pictures. And my background in customer experience is part of what I really bring into every session. A lot of times I'll say, I'm really going to hold your hand through this whole process. People have heard me say, I am the writer, director, producer of this show. Just exhale. It's going to be great. And people do. They exhale and they love it. So.
Well, and that's makes for such a much more natural image that you're able to capture, because sometimes how many times do you see people with a smile and their brow is furrowed? You can tell they're okay, just get this over with. I'm going to smile just because it's our 4th shot, and nobody likes picture day.
And
right?
I have gentle ways of saying, okay, now a little bit bigger smile, or different things like that, because I can tell when the person is uncomfortable.
Well, what's funny, and Rita, you had, when we were planning this episode out, you had mentioned that one of the reasons we're so active on social media is because literally we get a dopamine effect. You want to talk about that real quickly? In terms of the images that we're looking for, we want to go out and get that quick fix, see that dopamine, make us feel happy and a little bit de-stressed, and then we'll get back to it. But images have so much more. Or Coral, do you want to take
me.
that?
Yeah,
oh, okay. I'm sorry.
that's okay.
a lot
Just
of
talking
planning.
about the power of
Sure.
imaging, the power of social media, where that is where so much of our exchange is happening. That is exactly what people are looking for. Is that dopamine hit? They're looking for that connection. They want to feel excited. They want to feel happy. They even want to feel sad. I mean, they are getting on social media for any type of really loud feeling. And if your social media, if you're a solopreneur or you're a small business and you're running your social media page, what you really have is a micro community. People are maybe initially liking your page because they're your friend or family and you've asked them to, but you're eventually gaining new followers who are referrals or people who have used your service, and they keep you on their newsfeed, right? We know who we block and who we unfollow and who we don't. And we keep the ones that give us the feels very subconsciously that make us feel like we're a part of a community, right? My dentist is on there. I haven't blocked him yet because it's okay. It reminds me what it feels like when I walk into that space, and they're really friendly staff and they're comforting people. I am triggered. Just seeing the name of the business doesn't have to be maybe not everyone has a positive experience with their dentist, but any sort of business, right? When you even see the name, your brain is conjuring up your last experience. How do you experience these people, this group, this place of work, which sort of is a great segue into the importance of having custom imaging of your company, right? So take for example, the doctor's office. Plenty of physicians' offices have stock photography, right? They've got really some beautiful photos. But are we giving the customer a preview of what it's like to come into your space, right? And in these types of situations, we'll have a mock guest who, of course, is wearing the company's brand colors, and we'll work them through, some different staged interactions. But we're telling the story of, hey, if you're a patient of ours, here's what it's going to be like. Here's where you're going to check in. Here's the nurse's station. Here's all these things. So we go through the movements and we tell the story. And then right there, we have the actual surgeons and physicians. We've got their headshots right there in the space. So when you visit if you're shopping physicians and you're looking at different websites, one tells a stock photography story. The other says, this is what it's going to feel like. This is what it's going to, the connection, the emotions that you're going to have, the invitation you have in coming into this space.
Yeah, I've always said sometimes that website is actually the first front door they walk through.
Absolutely.
And depending on what they see before they open that door, they may not even decide to stop. And so if that's not tuned up, if that's not been refreshed, if that's not accurate in terms of, well, it's just stock. I've seen that photo before on somebody else's site.
Exactly.
You miss an opportunity there. We're
do.
fighting so hard for that next opportunity. Your approach actually does a couple of things, I think. I mean, you bring resources for the business owner in terms of that knowledge and that networking where you can bring someone like Rita into the mix should that be warranted. But I mean, your approach is different, right? It is unique. But you also give time back to the business owner. The reason I bring that up is because this next story, this next example I want to have you explore with us is you were engaged a while back with an attorney who actually needed a new site, but actually didn't realize how complex that process was going to be. And you were able to add some clarity and add some time back for that person. You want to talk about that?
That's right. Yeah. And this is a typical situation where the business owner comes and says, "Hey, I've got a web designer. They say I need some photos." And I say, "Okay." And I start asking questions, and then come to find out he's got multiple people doing different things, and none of them know each other. The web designer doesn't know the person who's doing the copyright. I don't know any of these people, and he's bringing me on to do the imaging. And I started asking questions about all this, and I said, "So who is managing this project?" And he says, "Well, I guess I am." And I said, "Okay, do you want to be?" Or can I help you with that? I mean, no pressure. I'm not trying to add to the bill here, but this is quite a bit. And this is another part of what I do. I can offer just the imaging if that's all you're looking for, if you've got your marketing team built out, but I can also help lead with that brand and facilitate those moving parts. And that is actually the partnership in which Rita and I work, is that when I am working with a client on their brand, so again, they may just come to me for photos, and then we go, okay, let's take a step back. Let's go upstream of marketing, and let's look at your brand. Let's talk concept. Let's talk audience. Let's understand how and why we're doing this before we just start jumping into it. And there are other brand directors in the city, and but to my knowledge, none of them have a business coach. That is an edge that I have on my competitors. And as you all know, Rita is fantastic. And a lot of times I'll bring her in at the beginning of working with a client on branding to gain clarity, to understand, okay, we've got this thing that we do that we're passionate about, that we're really good at, and how do we form that into a business that is successful, that is growing, that is flourishing, as opposed to draining. So I'll bring her in at the beginning, and we have clarity conversations. Sometimes they know exactly what they want, and they say, "Here I am. Can you just get it done for me?" And then in those situations, I bring Rita in at the end, and I say, she says, "Okay, if you're going to hit all of these marks, which you will, you're going to hit all of your goals and your business is going to explode, then what?" And that's where we kind of have those conversations around, okay, how is this sustainable? What do we do? What's your plan what is your growth plan? So we're pretty awesome stop within ourselves. There's more. There's a few other people on the team, but again, we're modeling that power of collaboration and delegation.
Well, I love the example you just gave us because realistically, and you see this happen all the time, you've got somebody writing content and somebody else doing photography and brand voice. And that you're able to look above the fray and say, wait a minute, the overall thing here is where are we positioning? And brand voice, if the imagery says cool and hip and the content says staged and old, that disparity, we pick up on it. Without even knowing it, you just subconsciously, we see all this, and that can make for a very bad experience. And that may
It's a train wreck.
Well, it may provide a reason that we're not going to pick up the phone and engage with your business. And it's the little subtle things that you didn't even think, well, I did the mechanics. I have content and I have images, but it's more than that. Right. And there's so much that you bring. One of the things that I think is fairly unique in terms of your service offering is a subscription program. And Rita, I think you alluded to this a little bit. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, where you actually can go out to events and activities? I know that's not the core of your business, but it's a nice little, hey, there's somebody else out there that can actually do this with a professional flair.
Thank you. Yeah, it is definitely fun. I do love when companies come to me and they just need all the pictures and they say, "No, this is fine for now. Okay, I'm happy to see you, but get your website together and all that." But the truth is, so much of what is happening right now, so much of where sales is happening is on social media. And anyone who is running a Facebook page or an Instagram page knows that you need a lot of content. And that is essentially the subscription service that I'm offering clients is we're building in a monthly price, and we're looking at 2 or 3 times a month. I'm on call to come out and grab pictures of something. Now, some of those we'll go ahead and schedule. We'll schedule headshots. We'll schedule staged interactions because, again, we want to tell the story a bit. So think, for example, of a real estate agent. Okay, this is a good example of someone who is wanting to really move beyond a website and have a web following, right? They're influencers. Anyone, if you hear the word influencer, whoever pops in your mind, that is someone who needs the subscription service because they are pushing content. They're wanting to tell the story of their business, what they're doing with their customers, but they're also wanting to elevate themselves and their personal self. So the subscription service allows us to plan and be strategic with the shoots we're going to put out, but then I'm also on call for these events and exciting things that maybe spur the hat happen with a client. Yeah, to be able to tell that story.
That's fantastic. Ladies, first of all, thank you very much for coming in today. I really, really appreciate just the knowledge that you guys share and the resource that we have in this community to really help all of us as we do move forward. I think one of the things that's really exciting about both of your business models is you guys are big picture thinkers. It's not just about the mechanics of, hey, I need a picture here or I need a survey done. It's really, let's get into it. Let's understand the business and let's add value consistently.
Absolutely.
And let's elevate more than what the client may be able to do by him or herself. Mm-hmm. And that's a huge benefit. I guess as we look at moving forward now into 2021, there is going to be that requirement. You got to stay new. You've got to find a way to stay relevant. Some of that's the information that you're putting out there. Some of it's your approach. Some of it's redeveloping the approach that worked, that's going to work going forward, but may not have worked in the past because what's in the past has now changed. Mm-hmm. And so that's going to be really, really exciting for people. It's going to be frustrating for people, and I expect a lot of calls just because people are trying to figure that out. Mm-hmm. And if you're carrying in those old business models, those assumptions, you may be sub-optimized for 2021 and beyond.
Well, we both offer complimentary discovery calls, so we're happy to answer questions. We're helpers. We want to help. Let us help.
And it's as simple as that. I'm going to have all of your contact information in the show notes. So if you're on my website, if you scroll down, you'll see the show notes for this episode. If you're out there on iTunes, if you're out there on Google Play, all these different areas where we post these episodes, look for the show notes. And if you can't find them, come back to JimRayConsultingServices.com, go to the podcast page, and you'll see the episode so you can find all this. Friends, thanks for listening. I know this has been a little bit longer episode than normal, but I hope there was some value and some insights there that's going to be valuable for you. So if you need any help, don't hesitate to pick up the phone and call. Most importantly, when you're ready, let's grow for it.